You join me in the back of my new Talbot Alpine. Bugger! So yeah, she is popping a little bit. It is the 5th of September and I came down. Not really had the chance to do any of the hydraulics today yet, but shall I just say, I might have bought some paint and I might have gone slightly mad. What I've done is I've painted I've painted half of this side of the car. So there's a bit of a difference. So yeah, just went down to Bytech, grabbed a couple of rattle cans or some other little pieces, and I ended up painting the rear quarter and the rear offside door, and as you can see it looks pretty good and we got a good paint match, so I'm very happy with that. Not a bad finish considering it came out of the can either. And I also painted the near side rear door, and then I painted the grille as well. Yeah, so not quite hydraulics yet, but basically I went mad on the paint. But yeah, the paint's not shiny, but at least well, it should polish up anyway. Once the whole car's polished up, it should look pretty tasty, I'd have thought. But yeah, at least one step closer to getting the whole car in one colour. So yeah,
I found that I just couldn't stop myself. I ended up painting even more of the car, and when I took a little break I found that the glove box can hold a can of zesty drink. But I've just been thinking, there's very little on the history of the Alpine, so why don't we delve into that for a little bit? In 1972, Chrysler faced a problem. They had acquired both the Roots Group and Simca, two major car companies in the UK and France. But by the 1970s, their top sellers, being the Hillman Avenger and Simca 1500, were looking rather old hat and conventional by this point. The project, codenamed C6, was an exercise which saw the developing teams at Roots and Simca put their brains together into designing a new car fit for the decade. Simca were in charge of the engineering, so the new car came with advanced features such as all-round independent suspension, served by double wishbones and torsion bars up front, with trailing arms at the rear, as well as anti-roll bars as standard equipment. The car also came with dual circuit brakes and Simca's proven overhead valve alloy-headed engine, canted back 42 degrees, complete with electronic ignition. The canted engine allowed Roots stylist Roy Axe to give the car a lower bonnet line and crisp, modern styling. The original plan for distribution of the car was that the French cars, known as the Simca 1307, would feature Simca's engine and running gear, whereas the UK cars, known as the Chrysler Alpine, would be rear-wheel drive with Roots' own engine, gearbox and suspension. Thankfully, this was dropped, and the Alpine was ready for launch in October 1975, picking up the 1976 European Car of the Year award along the way. The Alpine eventually came to the UK in 1976 and found itself with stiff competition from Ford's best-selling Cortina and Leyland's advanced Maxi and Allegro. The new car certainly cut it in terms of space, with a larger loading area than the Maxi and better styling to add. The UK cars were offered with two engine and trim combinations, a 1294cc GL and a 1442cc S. Small, but they certainly pack some punch. The 1294cc GL producing some 68 brake horsepower, whereas the 1442S produced some 85, some 10 more than the Cortina 1.6. You could then imagine that the reception of the Alpine in the UK would be a joyous one. It, however, was more apathetic. It seemed the British markets were more content with their three-box saloons rather than something modern. In March 1976, Chrysler sold 1,690 Alpines, a reasonable number, but in that same month, British Leyland managed to ship 2,882 Austin Maxes. Even the Alpine stablemates were leaving in the dust. Chrysler selling 2,000 Hillman Hunters and 2,400 Avengers, whereas in France, the Simca 1307 was holding an 11% share of the market. After some reshuffling in the range, you could have the 1442cc engine in the GL, and the lesser trimmed LS model was introduced to try and coax a little more market share in the UK, but to no avail. In 1979, Chrysler sold all of their European assets to Peugeot for the grand total of $1. The Alpine was facelifted and bore the revived Talbot name. Then in March 1980, a new saloon version was offered. This was the Solara. This was certainly going to bring sales to the C6 family. However, it came at a time when Britain was starting to buy into the hatchback, and the Alpine looked too old in the tooth to be taken seriously. Peugeot kept Talbots on sale whilst using the former Root and Simca dealerships to sell their own cars, but by 1985, production was ceased on the Alpine, Solara, Horizon and Samba, leaving Peugeot to take over the writing plant completely to make their own cars in the UK. What started as a promising new car fell flat and is known to this day as a non-starter. The old Talbot cars never received any of the fanfare that old Fords, Vauxhalls and even Leyland cars have today. However, these days we can appreciate the efforts of Roy Axe and the original design teams, for they have produced what is, frankly, an exceptional vehicle, even in beige.
You join me now on the 29th of October 2018. I've been doing more painting on the car, so this door is now painted. But I've still got the front of the car to do. I've got a couple of rust repairs to do. I managed to source a new tailgate for the car. However, the seller is somewhat reluctant to tell me how much he wants to sell it for. Then add to the fact that the battery's dead and that nothing is going right for me at the moment. It's all okay though, because I have a can of zesty drink and a cake. The first thing I want to apologise for is the fact that this episode has taken so long to air. It's mainly because I've been working on so much of the car, and a lot of it is just such a ball ache and boring that I thought that, well, you guys really didn't want to see it. Who really wants to see loads of episodes of me waiting for the weather to get decent so that means I can paint the car? But I have done some other things, like today I've only just fitted the rear view mirror, which is important. I've also got a new stereo for my tunes. This has to be my second best eBay purchase ever, the top one being this car of course. But yeah, this is a retro look radio. It's got Bluetooth, auxiliary, SD card slot there. It does absolutely everything. It's currently wired up to my phone, which is fantastic. And I think that this for £15 is a really good deal. And I can prove it works to you now.
Oh, for God's sake, get on with it, moron.
The first area that requires my attention today is the passenger door. This is one of the panels that's yet to be painted. And as you can see, it's still covered in this really horrible thick primer, which is... it's nasty. It's horrible stuff. It was all over the underside of the car. And there goes a tray. Just be working away on this. I decided to try a really thick coarse grade sandpaper just to make lighter work of this. It's relatively easy to sand off, but it's an absolute ball ache because there's just so much of it. So here we go then.
In preparation of painting the car, I start off with the 40 grit sandpaper, then move on to 80, then 160 and then finally 400 grade. Before I then get my special gloves out and then start masking up the car, ready for paint. For covering larger areas, I prefer to use bin liners rather than paper. I find that this is very affordable, and especially seeing as I don't get newspapers, I find that this is a very cost-effective way of doing things. After masking, I then start off on some heavy build primer. The grey primer is very absorbent, so it requires a base coat in order for a top coat to go on. As you can see, when it comes up nice and thick, it is an ideal base. Between this though, I needed to fill in some rust repairs, so here's me sanding that down now on the driver's side wing. Needs a little bit of work, but hopefully we'll get there. Next it's finally time for the actual top coat of the paint. Here goes the antelope beige, and it looks very, very nice already. And here is the end of that bit of a job.
So we've come to the end of another day of working on Annie the Alpine. So what have we done today? Well, rear view mirror is fitted. We've painted the near side front door, and we've also painted the front wing here. There's a little bit of a rust repair to do there, which I've just filled, but to be honest, this car's just going to be used as a usable classic, so it's, you know, it's not got to be absolutely 100%, it's just got to be tidy so I can just drive about and enjoy it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Sorry it's taken so long to get out. If you want to follow more of Annie's adventures, then please hit the subscribe button. If you want to see what other stuff I'm doing, again, please subscribe. Give me your feedback, give me a like, do whatever you feel. But yeah, your support is always welcome, and I've got to say thank you to you guys for being so patient with me, especially seeing as I've been so busy. So thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you again very soon. Toodly pipski.